We're going to try doing some lowercase italic letters. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. The guidelines that I've drawn already are the same as the lowercase letters that we did. So it's 7 squares of height, and that is broken up into 2 squares, then 3 squares in the middle, and then 2 squares. So instead of doing 3 squares wide as we usually do, this time I'm going to count out the 3 squares but go diagonally across. So it's going to go from that one to that one. So count 3 squares and then go 3 squares back. So you'll actually end up with a diagonal line every 3 squares. 1, 2, 3. And at the same time, so as I'm doing this, I'm counting out 3 squares at the bottom. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So in that corner to that corner. Join them up all the way along. So these guidelines are going to help to put our letters on a slant, which is what italic letters are. Finish these off quickly. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Still have to count each one. This is where you can easily go wrong, but it should stand out if you go wrong because the line will be at a different angle. If you've done them every 3, then your lines should all be at the same angle. So I've pressed on quite hard there so you can see. Now on the lowercase letters we used a circle stencil to get the letters shaped from a circle on every one. This time we're going to use what we call an ellipse stencil. So this has ovals on it. So instead of doing the polo holes, we're going to go for rugby balls, if you like. Now I still need to keep my letters in the guidelines, so they still need to be touching at the width and touching at the height at the bottom. So because my oval stencil isn't quite wide enough to fill the space, I'm going to have to shift it over slightly, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to do a line there, and I'm going to come along and I'm going to put the other side in over there. So I'm keeping the stencil at the same angle. I'm just putting one curve at one side, sliding it along, and the other curve at the other side, and it should be touching the guideline. So just like with the circle stencil, I'm going to come back and do the inside oval in this case. Now it's not going to be as easy to find the middle because when we were doing these up here, all the circles were obviously in the middle square. This doesn't have a middle square because we're on a slant and we're working in such a tight space. So I am going to have to go for a bit of a guesstimate, but it will be the same on every one. So once you get in the pattern of putting those ovals in the middle, and for the middles you shouldn't have to move the ovals over. So I'm going to choose the size that I want, and I'm going to try and do it in the same place on every single one, and I'm going to try and keep the stencil at the same angle. If I make a mistake, I can always rub it out. So try and go light because some of these lines are going to have to be ruled out anyway. Sorry, erased anyway. Because the letters aren't going to use all of these. These are just there as a guide. So again, I get my pen. Now I made the mistake of going too early with the pen last time. So let's just pencil these in first. So again, little tail, make sure that my letter is touching the width. B, so instead of it going up on a vertical as this one does, it's now going along this slanted line. So I'm going to keep my pencil along that line, touch the top and come back down. C, we just cap it off there and there. Need to rub out those lines. D, again up the line down. Still trying to keep the letter 1 square width, even though I am coming away from the grid. I am considering that the letter has to be consistent in width. I'm trying to keep my lines nice and neat. So again, like with the lowercase e, this has to come up a little bit so that that can come across, cap it off at the bottom. F along here, use most of this oval, cap it off at the top, trying to keep the thickness consistent. G, a little tail, touch in at both sides. H, so it's going to use the whole line, touch the top, most of the oval in the middle. I, I'm going to do the curvy eye again. J, using most of this line. Okay, the tricky one. So keeping my letter 1 square thick, even though I'm not on the squares. Touch in there. This is not really using any of the oval that I've just drawn. Oh, and there's not going to be any room for my M. Okay, so now I have the guide and I can quite easily see now where to pen in. So I've got a lot of sketchy, untidy lines, but I can eventually rub these out once I've put my fine liner pen on. That's too thick. Don't use felt tip, use a nice fine liner. And that will tidy up your edges. So it's all about letting the pencil lines guide your pen. But I'm trying to be confident and do it in one neat flowing line, because if you do it sketchy like you might do with a pencil, then you're going to end up seeing all those little lines. So I'm trying to be confident, and I should be, because I can see where it is I need to go. Consistency not great there. Carry on. So once I finish fine lining, I can rub out my pencil and I can make these look fantastic with some nice neat colour shading. Not quite touch my guideline there. But practice makes perfect. And if I can still make mistakes, I'm sure you will. But that's how we get better, is just to make mistakes. You can always go back and change it and improve it, or redo it. And like I've said with the last ones, you can challenge yourself by either completing your name, some different letters than the ones we've got here, or doing it on blank paper and using the measurements on a ruler to do these guidelines, which is where it does get quite tricky. But this is building up to that skill, so that when you're asked to do posters around school, hopefully you'll put this skill into some use and your work will look fantastic. Okay, I've pressed on really hard with that pencil there, so it's going to be more difficult to rub out. But you get the idea. So I'm going to add some nice, neat colour shading to these, and hopefully I'll get a good grade.